So yeah, man, it's been a little bit since you've woken me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, but how's it going?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Geosteering's kind of a thing of the past for me right now. I'm still going to participate in the World Cup thing
Oh, did you
if
sign up for it?
if it falls in line with some scheduling here. But yeah, I signed up.
Okay,
So
cool.
we'll see what
And now
happens.
you live up in Calgary, right?
Yeah, I'm in Calgary.
Okay.
I think last time we spoke, I was no kids, and now I have four.
Wait, no, has it been that long? You
Yeah.
didn't know, not for since we last spoke. You started having them when you worked at first for me at Revolution, because that was only 6, 7 years ago. Did you have 4 in 7 years?
Yeah, and six. So my
Okay.
oldest is
Okay.
six, 4-year-old, and then twins to finish it off.
Oh, well, I had an extra one too. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Twins are next level, man. It
Oh,
is
dude.
that first year is a blackout year. I don't
I
remember any.
can't
I
even
couldn't tell you a
imagine.
single memory.
I can't even imagine. So, and were they your first set? So, did you have twins and then more kids, or was it kids,
No,
twins?
no, we had girl, boy, and then boy girl twins right at
Okay.
the end.
Okay.
So yeah,
Well,
it's
it keeps you
intense.
honest, man. Did you get fixed?
Oh yeah,
You do, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yep. Well, that's great. So,
yeah.
when did we actually start working together? Was that with the AEP
That was
back at
AP, and
White
then it
Star?
went into White Star. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
So that's when it was getting wild, man. Yeah, you were always one of my you were one of my top guys for sure. And you always
yeah.
stayed in
Thanks.
touch through the years.
Yeah, I liked working with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
And it's everything. A lot of stuff is really like just keeping contact with the right kind of people, and things end up falling in the right place for you. So that's what I've
Yeah.
found, at least. So
Yeah.
try to keep
Yeah.
in contact with everyone that I work with or friends with or whatever. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I do too. I'm not always the best at it, but I certainly don't think any less of the friendship.
yeah.
Sometimes when I'm living in the moment, I'm not as good about, reaching out, but I
Oh, I hear you.
always appreciate it when people do. But
Yeah.
yeah, so we worked at White Star together, and that was really where it started kind of coming together for me. Remember the little well planning spreadsheet that I had, and
Yeah.
we went from not really, having these plans to where we started getting detailed plans, and I kind of
And that was
handed
pre-Star Steer.
that was pre-Star
That
Steer.
was
That's when
SES
talk
lifestyle.
about that
That
a
was
little bit.
SES was the Cadillac at the time. Yeah.
It was. It was. I remember that. And
Yeah.
we were going in there and we were working and we started, I remember, we had those issues on that. I think it was the Hill well where we stuck that BHA. I mean, it
Oh
was
yeah.
after that I really started learning about making the more detailed well plans and, integrated that spreadsheet that I did. But, those days were awesome, man. Do you remember,
Yeah.
anything specific about when we were doing it back then?
I just remember we were hauling. Like we were
Yeah.
going fast. You
Yep.
drilled fast. That Woodford was just like hot knife through butter.
Yep.
Um, and then yeah, the classic 2, 3 a.m. calls. I'm like, dang it, I hate that I have to call you right now, but I gotta call you.
Yeah, and that's one thing I actually did kind of want to talk to people about. When you're working towers, why don't you take a minute to kind of go through, you're actually the first geosteer I've had on. I've had people that geosteer, I do it. I've talked a little
Yeah,
bit about it, but it's been more like, I'm talking how do I communicate with the engineers really? But
yeah,
the other two guys, so I have really like three guys that have been my top. You're one of them. And then I've got these other two guys that kind of worked for me afterwards at West Edmond Lime Hutton, whatever it is, the Whaley West Edmond Hutton Lime unit.
okay,
And anyways, you guys were all you guys were good, but those two are still watching wells and they've had a lot of issues trying to come on. So I'm hoping I can get them on, but I got really one of my top guys here with me. So,
yeah, thanks.
talk about, why don't you talk about what it was like working towers? Like what is generally like, how do geosteers, operate, the 12, is it 12 on towers and then you switch every other
Yeah,
week? Kind of get into that and what it was like, during your time.
yeah. So when I was geosteering, kind of after the learning phases of geosteering, where you don't have someone kind of looking over your shoulder, checking every little thing you do, and you're kind of on your own. You're basically in your house, just like, I mean, I geosteered from right here for 5 years.
Hmm.
And when you're on your own, I mean, there are people you can call for a second set of eyes or something like that. But typically you just wait for a little bit more information, the next survey, maybe the next survey after that. And then you have a really good idea. Okay, that is right. This other interpretation is wrong. And I would say probably a lot of geosteering is having those multiple interpretations
Yes.
and only making the call when you have to make the call. But
Yeah,
if you're
to the
really unsure,
geologist that night.
yeah,
Right.
if you're really
Right.
unsure, you make that call and you say, hey, look, I've got 3 going. These 2 are similar. This one's quite a bit different.
Yep.
And these are the
Yeah,
ones I
you'd always
like.
have a good little wild card cooking.
Yeah.
I
And then,
appreciated that.
and it always, I always liked when you guys would give us, kind of everything that you had in the suite, right? Like
Yeah.
your seismic or kind of even
Yeah.
just like, okay, we're expecting a fault, this range VS. That way we have an idea of what's coming, upthrow or downthrow fault. And then we can say, okay, shoot, like we're kind of on the lower side. We're expecting of the window of our
Yep.
geology window. And we need to be on the higher side as we come to this fault because this is an upthrow fault. You kind of just have to see that coming before it actually happens.
So I want to kind of touch on that a little bit. And then I do want to have you kind of step through life of a geosteer, what
Okay.
working towers is like and how that goes. But that's actually, you brought up one of the main things. So you're talking about we're approaching a fault. It's something that we'd probably talked about in the geoprog. And so like what I wanted to ask you about is, you worked with me at American Energy Partners, White Star. We transitioned together from SES to Starsteer. So we were kind of like not original adopters, but like really pretty early.
Pretty
And it was
fresh, yeah.
immediately clear that it was vastly superior to SES, right? I mean, remember, it was just night and day, right? And so
Yeah.
now I hadn't got into like detailed planning with it yet. If you remember, I had my little magic spreadsheet that, is just a bunch of trig, and we could plug in VS and structure tops, and it spits out nice little well plans for drillers or this kind of stuff. Starsteer was awesome because we were just able to get the 0 VS targets out like immediately. We were just working in the let's call it the geosteering space, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the difference. We went from 2D and it was still 2D, but it felt like it was more interactive, like we were playing a video game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and even the features that, I mean, Starsteers, those Roji guys are just making it easier and easier and easier as you go along.
I've been giving tech talks for them, and so I see what they're releasing and what's coming out. It's crazy, dude.
Yeah, and just kind of the way, I mean, and I never planned any wells, but I could if you asked me to, right?
Yeah.
The way that you can just
I'd let you plan my well, buddy.
Tack on one target line to the next as you're going is such a great feature there.
Oh, buddy. So we could still keep like our fault interpretations and like what we were thinking intact. So yeah. So anyway, we kind of transitioned, into this, and now we ran a bunch of rigs. We were drilling these super fast Woodford wells, clanking through the Mississippian wells, fighting lost circulations, and kind of living in fear, if we're being honest about these faults, and over the years, I'll tell you what, like now, if there isn't a fault, and this about me, like I'm bored, you don't need me. And so, I just remember the ability that we were able to start making more detailed well plans and execute a lot easier now that we had better tools. Now, what I was going to ask you is this, because I was kind of already, in my opinion, making kind of like different geoprogs than other people were at the time. Remember, they were like a little bit more informative, and we had all these things, and really White Star kind of like integrated it into their entire like company structure, because we had, when we're operating in a company like that, we have these decision trees and all this kind of stuff. And so, we would be able to like use the geoprog for land and different, basically the geoprog at White Star was servicing basically every department involved with drilling the well. It had the information required for land, like surface footages for surveys, well location, and actual visuals and pictures. And so my question is, and I always ask all my other guys, is what kind of stuff were you getting from other people? And, what set that apart? And do you think it made a difference?
I think, the change of software makes a big difference. And one thing that I really enjoyed about the change from SES to Starsteer was you're able to take more of that information that you guys provide us.
Yeah.
And you can put it right into Starsteer. So you can put these little notes into Starsteer, say, hey, look, we're expecting a fault somewhere in this range. And it'll pop up on your wellbore where that spot is. Yeah, I mean, you look what 200-300 feet before, and then a couple hundred feet after, and you
Yeah.
kind of
And we're
expect
working
that
in
that
100-foot
feature.
segments, essentially, right?
Yeah,
Stands at a time is kind of how we think.
exactly. So one thing that I did receive from other guys from other companies was just a screenshot of the seismic data.
Okay.
And so you take that PDF screenshot and you line it up with the plan in
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
StarSteer.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have a little bit of basically a visual of, I mean, it's seismic. It's not perfect, but it gives you a decent representation of what to expect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I actually started getting big time into that. And, you know, and one of these things that we got to talk about, you know, this is a really interesting point. You know, like, honestly, you've always been one of my favorite geosteers. Like you mentioned, you know, you have a very delicate touch on the wake up. You know, like now, and well, hey, listen, I know that a lot of geologists, I'm sure you've had some absolute like nightmare, like you woke them up and it was the worst thing ever. You know, they're these
Nice
kinds of
chewing in the
things,
morning. Yeah.
buddy, you know. But I just remember you have like a nice little way about you, and it was always prepared and never like, you know, panicking. And so, you know, I definitely appreciate and remember that.
Yeah. I think I always try to give the best and worst case scenarios
Yeah.
and then say, all right, if this is the worst case and we're not sure which interpretation's right, and we go with the worst case,
Right.
our best case is still in zone for another 400 feet. And then
Yeah.
we can make that adjustment if we need to.
Yep. Yep.
And that's kind of what you're always looking for on the geosteering side is you're projecting out, and it also depends on how fast you're drilling. If you're drilling Woodford that fast, you're
Yeah.
looking probably 200-300 feet ahead from the data
Yeah.
that you just put in.
Right.
Because by the time
Now
you get
they're
that data
streaming the data a lot
interpreted,
more. Like
oh
all the
yeah, that's,
platforms are streaming it, which that helps. You know, there was a lot of nights I was up late just waiting for that stupid survey to come in, you know.
but you also have to check and make sure, because sometimes,
Oh, the data
NWD
screwed
fat
up.
fingers and then
Yep.
data's messed up and you're going back, rifling through, manually reloading from there. And yeah, that can be a headache, but
What were some of the biggest challenges you were faced with, you know, like, so before you had to make the call to the geologist to, you know, get them up and help with decisions? And I assume a lot of the time it was kind of different. Like some people, you were just made the call and talked to the DD or the rig, whatever it was,
yeah.
and they do it. And but then you had the control freaks like me and Scott Causey that have to, you know, have our finger on every
Yeah.
single actual target change that gets made.
Yeah, it's a broad range. So there's some guys who give you, like when I was working at Shell, they'd let us do half-degree changes, however
Little
we wanted.
bumps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we would see it coming and we would just do, all right, half-degree this stand. And we were sitting in the room with the DDs. So we'd
Oh, so
tell
you
them,
knew.
hey, we're going to do half degree, and then we'll level it back off or
Yeah.
whatever. So that was kind of a slick way to get around it without having to call them in the middle of the night, especially. But
Yeah.
if, daylight hours are much easier. They don't, you guys
Well,
don't
and
care
like
so much during
here's
the
another
day.
one, you know, like if you're drilling the Eagleford or something that's, you know, it's relatively flat, you kind of know the drill, sure. But it's all, you know, I've always existed in these like nightmare scenario, you know, lost circulation faults, and there's a 30-foot fault here, and we're not sure what happened on this side, but we're going to do it anyway. So, you know, that warrants a little bit extra, you know, finessing, I think.
Yeah, and there are times where I mean, there are times where you're on the phone with the ops geo for 4 hours,
Yeah.
until you finally like sort it out. Like, I think, this is the one. This is definitely the right one. And then as you get that next set of data, it just falls right in line. You're, oh, yeah, we got it now. Kind of going back to your most difficult or life of a geosteer lifestyle would be, it can, if you're in a more flexible type company, geosteering company, you can work with I was working with you guys. We only had 3 on our team or 2 on our team. So if there's
Yeah.
only
Who
2
was
on the
the other
team, you
person?
really
I
just
can't
have
remember their
me and
name.
Toby Barlow.
God, yes, of course
Yeah.
that's who it was, dude. How's he doing?
So he and I were working together, that like what year ago.
Okay.
And then the company we're working for, they dropped all their operations. So Toby was a
Okay.
contractor, I was a contractor, and
That's
we
right. It
just
was
had
you and
to
Toby.
find another spot. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
All right.
But yeah, so it depends on the size of your team. I think an ideal team is 4, so that you can have, rotate night shift if you need, or
Yeah. Do you
that
find
way you get
people
some
that
time off.
Well, I was going to say, do you find people that like the night shift versus the day shift?
There
Have you
are
ever
people
had?
that really like the night shift. Yeah.
Okay.
And at first I did like the night shift because I could work the night shift and then wake up
It'll,
early, kind of be a little
yeah.
miserable, but I could go to a dentist appointment or, you know, something like
Yeah.
that. Whereas if you're always on night shift, you don't have any breaks.
Yeah.
You plan that whatever that appointment is, and the appointment reminder comes up. Well, I can't go. Maybe it'll work in a week.
Yeah.
Because you're on the rig schedule at that point.
Well,
Um,
and that's the other thing, man. Like we worked a lot. Like y'all
yeah,
worked a lot, like hardly any vacation. These are long shifts and they're stressful. We're running a couple of
yeah.
rigs. You guys might have some other clients. And so you were now, did you stay with Performwell
I stayed with
after
them
was that?
for 9 years.
Okay. Okay. Well, you
So
were a solid hand.
I felt like I knew what I was doing. I feel
Yeah,
like
you did.
that
You're
many
one of the
years under your
ones I
belt,
could
you figure
sleep
it
at
out.
night for sure. Like there's no
Yeah,
question
good.
about that. No
Yeah.
question.
But you also get like a broad range of what the geologists will let you do. So
Right.
Shell was half a degree. You guys wanted to be, a part of every change.
Yeah. Yeah.
This other company I was working for, we had full autonomy. Like we were talking
Okay.
to the rig on a Teams chat. We had Teams chat everything. So there's a dialogue of everything that was going on.
And that's really one of the best record keeping ways is to have
Yeah.
either team or text. At Revolution, we didn't, well, and I think, we didn't do any like zero VS target change.
Right.
We basically just kind of talked about it, looked at where we were at and gave like an angle or a kind of a place to head to. But
Yeah.
speaking of Whaloo, what would you say is some of the more challenging environments you've worked in? Like what's some of the most difficult or, toughest spots that you've had to work?
Kind of the plays is what's challenging. Like that scoop stack, that can get
Yeah, that's tough.
difficult. And I did a granite wash well way back, but it was like, because as you're coming through, everything's changing because you're in a channel, right? And so, one type log looks good for now, and then, whoa, it's totally different over here. You got to switch type
Yeah.
logs, and then you're
Yeah.
kind of maneuvering as you go.
Yep. Well,
And
that was one of
back
the
in
really
SES
good
days
things
too.
about StarSteer, though, was the ability to do the thickening and thickening tool,
Yeah.
and just that ability to change the type well. Like we were able to do that like pretty much from day one with just.
Or even create a type well off of a lateral that you have
Oh, that
that's
was,
deeper
dude, we
than
had
where
to
you're
do that
going
a
to be drilling the
lot,
next
didn't
one.
we?
Yeah,
That's
man,
another
that's
thing
such
that
a
we
great
have to
tool.
do in well planning, right? Like, so we've
Yeah.
got like, say we're going to drill a well in the Mississippian, but we have the only well in the area is a Woodford horizontal. And we know
Mhm.
that, say, the Mississippian's like really heterogeneous. Like you don't really know what to expect. So, something 2 or 3 miles away does not necessarily represent what's there. So
Yeah.
that would be something we would do. So we would have a deeper Woodford well that would have MWD data all the way down and through the curve. And what would we do? What would you do with that?
You just build a type log right off of it. You basically take the TVD log from
Yep.
this section to this section, and
Yep.
that is your new type log. Or if you drilled it down and it's the heel of the well you're drilling, and
Yeah.
you landed a little too deep, well, then you got your type log. You just retrace
That works
back
too.
over that whole thing.
Yep. No, that's a neat trick. And we've had to use that quite a bit, like quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah,
So
and then as you go along and you're drilling on a pad, right? Your first well is probably the most difficult because then that well right next to it, you at least have an idea of what to expect from this one,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
So
It's nice once you've already got like a pretty good section on it.
yeah, definitely.
Now I have had some surprise faults and stuff like coming right out of surface, basically, not surface
Yeah.
casing, but like right under the surface location where you wouldn't expect it. But
Yeah.
for the most
And
part,
everyone's got different land too. So
yeah,
this last company we were drilling with, I mean, we were landed on horsts, right? So we'd land on a horst and then we'd know where we were and then we'd disappear, right, into a huge fault, 50
Yeah.
foot plus, and then
Yep.
we'd come back and it was just like, it was pretty cool, but
I
it's
love
also,
that though. That's my favorite
oh man,
thing.
you're
Like,
sweating
I
on
wish I
those.
was doing it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's definitely my lane. Like
Yeah.
one of the things we did at Whaloo was there's a channel that cuts the upper section of the boat arc out over it's a perfect channel. It cuts it out, but we had a surface location on the other side of the channel, and the reservoir was like on the other side, but we could only get it from there. So we literally had to drill through an erosional channel, and I drilled into the wall of a canyon. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've got a
Yeah.
canyon, and my reservoir is one of these beds here, and we came in from this side, drilled through the canyon and into the target zone. Like that's how detailed and like absolutely insane some of the stuff we had to do there was.
And now, is this all
Excuse
due
me.
to like getting into, we're not really drilling all our tier one stuff anymore. We're kind of into the tier 2 and 3 categories. So the geology in the tier 1 is pretty like go. Because I recently drilled a Woodford well and it was a lot more complex than the ones that we had over at AEP White Star.
Yeah, and so that, I mean, you've kind of got a little bit of a double question, comment there. Like, is tier 1 done? I mean, listen, we've both lived through a couple of downturns in this
Yeah.
business, and I know for a fact I worked for companies that only drilled their best stuff available when that was happening, which
Yeah.
is kind of weird to think.
Yeah.
But so is the tier 1 there, but here's the deal. Like we're still getting big wells, like the infill wells can be good. But what I would say is that we're stretching the limits on structure, like a lot of the good, easy, no faults in the way, no challenges, like pretty straightforward drilling. Yeah, obviously, like
Yeah.
that's going in. Now we have hope with things like the Cherokee Shale and other new, exploration discoveries, which would be new benches in different basins, these sorts of things. But ultimately, yeah, you're left with harder, more challenging things to drill, which is, honestly, hopefully where I kind of niche in here in Oklahoma over the next little bit. Like, hey, that's basically been my bread and butter the whole time.
Yeah, it
Like
is
if I don't
fun
have,
having those challenging ones for sure.
it
The ones that are
is,
boring and flat and straightforward. I mean,
I've really maybe drilled a couple one target change wells. Like everything in my career has had like a couple anticlines. We expect a fault, some kind of planning around either a geohazard, an engineering hazard, these kinds of things. So I don't know. I kind of like it. I think I would,
yeah.
just laying down sticks and drill them in 5 minutes really isn't my jam. I like this kind of
Yeah.
boutique, get in there with a fine tooth comb on the
Yeah.
planning.
Well, and those tighter target windows make it fun too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So
I mean,
something that's challenging structurally with a tight window. We
yeah.
actually had a little bit of wiggle room at Whaley, which was nice
Yeah.
because it, not having 10-foot tolerances was the only way. I mean, while we were out there, and again, you didn't experience a lot of it, but it was just take off on us. You remember on the first well, you drilled the state with us. Remember how it just took off, like
Yeah.
basically went straight up?
And we're like, what?
That happened all the time.
Oh man, that's the worst too. And you start thinking like, all right, what's the DD doing? I gave
Well,
him
at
the line.
first,
Where is he going?
yeah,
Right? Yeah. And then
yeah,
you're like,
yeah.
oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we learned to fight it in different ways and kind of recognize what was going on. And ultimately, what it was is that it's mostly a karsted system, especially in certain parts of the field. So you're just pushing that bit like, you can't tool face, it does what it was going to do, but we'd eventually kind of figured out, different tips and ways to keep it controlled. But,
Yeah.
the other thing that we had was a lot of like motors going down. So
Yeah.
it was kind of rough drilling, so like all the wear and tear, so now we're not holding tool face and we're just out of it, and so now we're going to have to trip for a motor. But
Yeah.
all in all, we fixed all of we handled all the challenges at Whaley really well. It was certainly a lot of fun. And just real quick to harken back to the tier 1, I would say everything that we did at Whaley was tier 1. That's probably the best reservoir in the United States, honestly, if you just look at its natural characteristics.
Oh,
But did I lose you? We can edit that out.
shoot. Yeah, we're back.
Welcome back, buddy. That may have been just like an internet connection or something, but
Yeah.
I can just edit that part out.
Big
I've
guy.
gotten pretty good. I've gotten pretty good at handling this little podcast stuff. It's an interesting path I didn't expect to be going down, but here I am.
Yeah. What is going on with you now? So are you on the hunt? Or
Well,
are you?
yes and no. Yeah, and I've got to get working. I
Yeah.
had like a really extraordinary year in terms of like chaos and dealing with a bunch of like family stuff, from dogs to my dad passed away and family life, and we kind of got everything settled and came out the other side here, and it's time to get going. But corporate, I've been shoving my resumes in on LinkedIn, but that doesn't feel like the right fit. Honestly,
Yeah.
what it is, I'm waiting on paperwork from a major consulting firm. I'll be able to, sell their services here in the Mid-Con, and I've got a couple clients lined up.
Okay.
They're going to provide me software. I'm going to put a few things together and go hit some people up. But I've got a few people in mind that have been telling me
Yeah,
all
I
these
always
on here.
found, throwing your resume on LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever, you might get oh, like, can you tell us a bit more? And then it's just like right
I
downhill. I've never
never
landed
got a
anything
job
from
that
that.
way. I
No.
got a job out of college, came out with freaking $70,000 in student loan debt and a box of clothes, you know.
Yeah.
But that was a job hooked up from friends. And then every job after that was like, yeah, even getting let go during a layoff from the big gas layoff at Sandridge. You know, I did independent consulting for a bunch of people,
Yeah.
did some stuff in minerals in Mexico and Alaska, and did a bunch of oil and gas. But then a friend from Sandridge called me, Steve Nath, and said, come and work with him at Kirkpatrick. And I was, and then I slid from there to ADP. ADP kind of transitioned to White Star, and I went over to Revolution, which was the best decision of my life.
Yeah. Oh
And
man, the experience you
yeah,
got out of that too, just
well, that
it's
and
probably
yeah, it
next
was just
level.
good for my family, for everything. And so it's kind of set me up to where I was in this position. It was out of the blue, like there was a little bit of like, okay, like what is actually happening now? And I was talking to a friend of mine from AEP, and he just said, you should do a podcast. And this was 3 weeks ago, dude.
Really?
Like, I mean, yeah, like I started $150 in equipment and a Zoom thing, and then we did the moon episode. And
That's awesome.
yeah, that's
That is cool.
and
That is a really cool thought. I don't know. I
well,
mean,
so 3 weeks ago I did this, and here I am. I didn't think about it. I'm just throwing content out. I've got kind of
yeah.
a game plan here. It makes more sense than anything I've ever done in my life, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest with you. I'm able to efficiently, all my friends want to talk to me for some reason. And, I'm able to pump content out. So I've got
Yeah.
already banked 12 like full length videos, no shortage of guests. And each one of those turns into shorts. And see, the
Yeah.
shorts are the workers.
Yeah.
They go out onto the streets for me, and they're freaking out there on YouTube just hustling.
Hey,
I
hey,
don't care
come check
about
this
that
out.
much about quality. Like it's the content
Yeah.
and then LinkedIn, I'm trying to like figure out what to do there and
Yeah.
different tricks. And Facebook, of course, my family and friends are all so I just saw crazy growth, honestly, and a reason to keep going. So I got a better camera, a better host for better, higher quality video, and I'm just going to keep doing it. And, I can pretty much get it all. Let me put it to you this way. I would be able to I could record 4 30-minute podcasts, turn those into shorts. So I'd have 4 banked episodes, and what is it, 4 times 20? Let's just call it, I've got 80 shorts. That is enough for weeks. And the thing is, you roll the ones out from the other ones. And I mean, I don't know. The whole thing makes sense to me. I should have been in marketing, I guess. But
Yeah.
honestly, I'm going to keep doing it. It's bringing in work. And here's the real thing this is what I really feel about this is that this isn't even about me, dude. Like, honestly, it's about bringing people like you on, which you're going to talk about what you're doing now here in just a second. And, I had an epiphany the other day too. This person, Taylor, just, reached out to a friend who gave her my number, and, she's looking for work. People that are looking for work can come on
Yeah.
and just, highlight themselves. I got to vet them first. I don't need like the company bully or some harasser or something like that. But, but I have people come on and kind of show themselves and, highlight and see if it helps them find work. So
Yeah.
anyway, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so why don't you tell everybody what you're doing now? You haven't been geosteering for you were working for?
Yeah, I'm working for a company called TracerCo. So we put these chemicals down hole, and essentially what they do is you can put a unique chemical tracer. We have a bunch of different unique oils, waters,
Radioisotopes and stuff like that?
No, they're not isotopes. They're chemicals. So
okay.
Kind of our enemy is dilution. So if you put a water tracer down there and you want to see the communication between your wells, you put a unique water tracer. Let's say you have a 3-well pad, right? Put a unique water tracer in 3 different sections of this one. So you have ABC here, and you have DEF here, and HIJ here. You can see the communication and how much production you're getting out of each well and across the pad. So it's pretty interesting. And I think
that's pretty cool.
It's brought everything a bit more full circle, because when you're on the drilling side of things, especially geosteering, you are like hyper focused on one aspect. I mean, so much tunnel vision that you don't see. We actually are doing this for the production of the well, and the tracer side of it has brought me into the production side of oil and gas, which is, I mean,
now, do they pump them with the frac? Is
Yeah,
that
one
when
with
they
the
go
frac
in?
usually, typically, yeah. But you can do it in water floods or gas floods, or
I was going to ask. I'm sure there's other
I mean, there's
applications.
offshore applications. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
everything.
Sounds like you like it, man, and
It's
that you did
interesting,
it.
totally. And
Okay.
sales is a different world, right? So
Yep.
I'm fumbling through it a bit, but I think I'm
You're
starting to
charming
sort
and
it out.
handsome, though. You're honestly, I can see there's a reason you're still doing it. No, you've got kind of that smooth vibe that tends to that type of gig.
Thanks. I think another
Oh, cool.
aspect of it is once I had the twins, and this goes back to life of a
Did it?
geosteer. You're up at 5 a.m., you're down at 5 p.m., and you're pretty much glued to that seat for those 12 hours. I mean, there's the occasional, I'm gonna run out to the kitchen and grab, a glass of
Yeah.
milk and run back,
Yeah.
or whatever it
But
might
that's
be.
right. You're not playing
But
video games. You're not messing
no,
around. Like this is a 12-hour focused job. It is
yeah.
no nonsense.
And I mean, I'm not kidding. There were wells where I was sweating
Oh,
because it was
buddy, I
so
still
intense.
toss and turn about these damn
Yeah.
wells, dude. I haven't drilled
Yeah.
one in a year.
Yeah. So it's intense. But yeah, sales is a
Now you
different ball of
go
wax.
ahead. Go ahead.
That's all I was gonna say.
Well, I was just going to say you're an expat. You live in Calgary.
Yeah.
And so I've actually never been to Calgary. What's the oil and gas market like there? Is there
Oh,
kind
it's
of
big. Calgary's kind of a big hub here in Canada. It's basically
yeah.
it's kind of like Calgary, Edmonton, and then St. John's, Newfoundland, which is I was looking at
Okay.
going out there this year, and from Calgary there's no direct flight, and they're 3.5 hours ahead of us.
I was going to say
And
that's quite the haul. I
it
mean,
ends
that's
up being
far.
like there's no direct flights. You have to take connection.
Huh.
It's a 15-hour ordeal to get over there. So it's,
Forget it. Get an RV.
yeah,
They're big
yeah,
up
it's
there in
wild.
Canada. I see
Yeah,
a
oh,
lot
yeah.
of RVers in Canada.
Yeah, but it's beautiful out here. I think
Just
my
imagine.
biggest downfall is I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. So
Right.
growing up with 9 months of summer and 3 months of winter was kind of my vibe. Now
Yeah.
it's flipped upside down.
Yeah, you're not very tan right now, dude.
No, this is about as tan as I get anymore.
Yeah, well, probably a good thing with all the skin cancers of the world, But well, that's cool. So that's great. I sure appreciate you coming on the show, bud.
Yeah, well, you got to get out here.
Hey, one of these days, with
Yeah.
the new stuff going on, maybe there's a reason for me to come to Calgary for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely.
Awesome. All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching thank you and thank everybody for watching the Grizzled Geologist Podcast. This is where it's live and real. Make sure you subscribe to the show, hit the like button, make sure you ding the notification bell. If you would like to come on the show, make sure you go to www.thegrizzledgeologist.com, fill out a form. I'm looking for geosteers in particular, but also unemployed geologists that, would like to kind of get themselves out there and, get some visibility with future employers. So thank you for joining in, and we will catch you next time. See ya.
You have to work for it. Don't be crazy. And work for your money.